First story, the president of the United States is being criticized right now after what he said about the death toll from the new coronavirus. After Trump said it's all under control, he was being interviewed. It was an interview with Axios for HBO, and interviewer Jonathan Swan pressed him on the fact that 1,000 Americans are dying each day from COVID-19. Trump responded with, "They are dying. That's true. It is what it is. But that doesn't mean we aren't doing everything we can. It's under control as much as you can control it." Mari, I want to start with you. What's your reaction to that? Do you feel like things could be categorized as under control?
I don't think we've ever had this under control. I mean, I don't know where everybody's based, but I'm in New York City. We had like the worst amount of deaths. We had such a hard time controlling this. And I think that we did a decent job. And even then, and Kuma was out there talking to us every single day. And even then, I was looking around and I'm like, I feel like we just weren't prepared. So we're constantly trying to catch up. And compared to other countries, it's insane that he would even say this is, under control. We have kids going back to school in September and nobody knows what's happening. I've spoken to so many moms. No one has any idea of what's happening, if they're sending their kids to school, what the plans are. So how can you say that something is under control when people are still really afraid to go back into a normal life? I would assume under control means you can find a little bit of normal in your daily routine. And I don't think that people have found that yet. So to say normal or to say like, we have this under control is just, I think the way that Trump speaks is out of the realm of reality. Because to know that 1,000 people are dying a day and to even assume that that's under control is just insane. And just overall, a lack of empathy and a lack of regard for human life. Because that's a lot of people. And I know that everybody's like, oh my God, but there's so many millions and millions of people. Granted, but until that touches you personally, it's like, how can you sit here and account, even if it's one person, to sit here and say it is what it is? That's just such a lack for humanity that, it just shows like where we're at as a country.
Chris, I want to bring you in because, Mari, I think you make a good point, which kind of perfectly was basically about my next question, which is, do you think that there's been a shift in how we talk about death? Like the actual gravity of one person losing their life, somebody's mother, somebody's daughter, sister, father, family member, friend, and how big of a deal that actually is. You hear people talking and experts, officials are saying, hey, yes, kids are gonna get sick. Some kids are gonna get sick. And then you see scientists and epidemiologists saying some people who get sick are going to die, and we're not 100% sure who that's gonna be. Have you noticed that? Like maybe being desensitized to what death actually is?
Desensitized. Yes, most definitely. And there's a lot of lack of empathy as well. I agree. It doesn't really hit you until it hits close to home, and it's sad that it takes that much at this point of time. But we're now 1,000 people a day. That's a lot, and I hope it doesn't become like the new normal where we're just so desensitized by it. But I think it's very important that we take the knowledge that we're given and protect our own families. I mean, President Trump could make it, anything he wants. He could say it is what it is, all he wants, and it's this way because everybody's getting tested, and just take it with a grain of salt, honestly, because we know the numbers. I think we know the numbers very well, and I think that we see that he has a lack of empathy. So with that being known and stated, I think that we should really just be conscious of the decisions that we make for our children, how often we're out, because at this point, I feel like we don't have a trusted source or a trusted president. I don't feel safe. I don't feel like he's taking this seriously. And so he's really putting it all on us, the people, I feel, to make the decisions for ourselves. And so we can sit here all day and listen to him and get upset about it. But at the end of the day, it's like, hey, yeah, we do know you lack empathy. So here's what's going to happen. You have to make the decision. Are you going to send your children to school or are you not? you know?
And unfortunately, that's proven to be such a difficult question for
It's
so
a
many people. It
difficult,
seems simple,
it's a
like,
difficult
no, I'm not going to
decision
send my
too.
kids to school, but not everybody has
Yeah, the
child
luxury of
care.
not.
Not everybody, and yeah, so that's been,
Wow.
And
Well,
that's
that's
been
part of the
interesting. Yeah.
problem, right? Like that's part of what he does, right? Trump created this narrative that this isn't that big of a deal, and he normalized 1,000 people dying. When we had 800 people dying a day, he was literally, this is at the worst of the pandemic, and he was just acting like, oh well, New York has to deal with that. New York is part of the U.S. Like this is
Right.
your country that you're leading. So right then and there, I knew already where his
Oh,
whole
and blame the governors,
right.
the individual governors. Like, no, are you the leader of this country or not?
But he set this narrative, right? That this is like you said, it is desensitizing people, and he's kind of creating this almost new normal. But in doing that, he's also cutting funding. So when you're looking at schools even thinking about not opening, he's saying like, okay, well, we're not going to fund the schools, and we're going to pull this. These are schools that are public schools where there's tons of kids going, depending on food, depending on shelter, depending on all types of services, and you're threatening to cut funding. So how are these schools, how does that even translate to parents, right? How do they feel safe where there's already like a threat to defund schools, to send their kids off and know that these schools are going to be sanitized properly, that they are going to be isolated if there's an incident, like all of these other things. So yeah, of course, a lot of parents now are being faced with this really difficult choice. And you're now like for New York, at least, I know some districts are even closer, but you're like 3 weeks away from school. And there still is like no direction on where we're going. That's where we're at as a country. Like that is really telling. We are supposed to be one of the greatest nations in the world, and we don't have a plan for our kids. Last year, my daughter is 16, and she's been trying to decide what, if she's going to do the hybrid program or she's going to do online entirely. And one of the things that she was talking to me about, she's like, 3 million kids last year did not do any schoolwork at all. From March till the end of the school year, they did absolutely no schoolwork because they didn't have the means, or because the parents couldn't support them, or whatever. They just weren't in a space. Do you know how much that is to have 3 million kids that were not educated last year? From March till the end of the school year. That is unheard of. So what you're going to tell me that in all that time, 3 months they've had it essentially, and they haven't been able to come up with a plan because the government cannot, for the better of everyone, come together and just say, hey, let's put our differences apart. This isn't even something political. This is a health crisis, and let's just come together and create a plan. We're just in a bad place. As a country, we're in a bad place.